On behalf of the Area Agency on Aging of Pasco Pinellas, I welcome you to Aging on the Suncoast. According to AARP's fact sheet, in the United States, approximately 7.8 million children are living in the homes of grandparents. In Florida, this translates to 12% of our children who are under the age of 18. Over 150,000 grandparents in Florida are responsible for their grandchildren, and 38% of these households have no parent present in the home. On today's show, we'll talk about kinship care, learning about the challenges and the resources to assist these families. I'm pleased to welcome Al Hart, who is the Coordinator for Family Resources, and also with us is Leah Clendenning, the Program Manager at the Area Agency on Aging. Thank you for joining us both today.
Thanks for having us.
Let us start by understanding what kinship care is. Al, can you share with us what is that concept?
Kinship care is a program that Family Resources has been putting in place in Pinellas and Pasco County for the past, I want to say, 8 years. In the program, what we like to do is provide relative caregivers with support, with assistance, and with resources availed within the community. We recognize the need in the community for this service, and we like to go out to the relative caregivers, providing home visits, providing group support as well, in which the relative caregivers are able to kind of share similar stories and resources with one another and recognize each other's resiliencies.
In my introduction, I talked about grandparents, and you're using the term relative caregivers. So kinship care goes beyond just a grandparent relationship.
Absolutely. We have cousins raising cousins. We've had, I don't want to steal Leah's thunder, but we've actually had a same-sex couple raising a grandchild. And recently we had a member of a 12-step support group take care of his sponsee's biological child. So there was no blood connection whatsoever. So it's amazing the strength that these people, the relative caregivers, have to keep and ensure family history is maintained, family heritages are maintained, and I'm floored every day about the family sense that the relative caregivers have, and I am just always in awe of what they're capable of. They're just amazing people.
It sounds
Heretofore, traditionally, grandparents were thought of as older folks and blood relatives. Today, it's quite different. The non-traditional families, there are people in the community. It could be a next-door neighbor. It could be an uncle, an aunt. It could be people from school, colleagues that step in and take care of the children.
So the common element here is that they are making a sincere commitment to take over the daily care of these children in their home, keeping them out of the foster care system, giving them a safe place and a stable environment. I talked some about the statistics in Florida being 150,000 grandparents, and now when we talk about non-traditional caregivers, the numbers are going to be far beyond that. Are we seeing that in Pasco and Pinellas, Al?
Yes, we are. The phone rings almost daily where I get a new referral, either a sheriff or a CPI investigator or church, or so I do get calls almost daily about a relative caregiver who is looking to find assistance. And in the social services arena, if you don't have a reason to know about resources, then you're kind of out of the loop. And if you consider grandparents at 55, they probably haven't had much experience with the school system now. And we have a whole new generation of kids who have a different set of needs than they would have 30 years ago when our grandparents were raising kids. So in that, a lot of times these relative caregivers are looking for any kind of support. I got a call yesterday looking for a car seat because this woman was just given custody and they couldn't take the grandchild out of the hospital until she brought the car seat into the hospital to have it inspected. Now, we're talking about a person who is low income. So $50 is, you know.
She can't run out to the store.
Correct.
And she's not, doesn't have the material equipment.
Exactly.
Let's talk some about the circumstances that cause the child to be moving into this kinship relationship. I imagine that there's a whole host of circumstances that precipitate that.
Some of the circumstances that I've run across are medical, mental health, drug and alcohol, incarceration.
The death of parents,
Correct.
HIV/AIDS, and have you infirmed.
So often it's a crisis event.
Yes.
So not only is the person assuming the responsibility for the child, but they may be in a healing process, dealing with their own children who are dealing with crisis at that time.
Yes. So then it's a twofold problem, because then the grandparent is responsible for the daily care of the child, and then they have to maintain a relationship with their biological child, trying to balance all of the scales to have the child grow up in a nurturing, loving environment. And as you know, with mental health issues, drug and alcohol, you know, some of the behaviors that the biological parent may have may not be suitable for the child to have experienced while this is going on.
You've touched upon some of the challenges, and certainly the circumstances that precipitate this are a challenge. But you also touched upon some of the benefits, the sense of family that carries forth. What are some of the benefits that come from kinship care?
Well, I think the most important thing is that these people love these children. This is not their job. This is not something they'll get paid for. And they're willing to go through whatever hardship necessary in order to ensure that this child is given a loving, nurturing start. I just heard recently one of my grandparents, and I don't want to steal a quote, but he said he wants to make sure this chapter of their life has a good ending. And I really like that analogy, that he wants to make sure these children are given every opportunity to have a good life. As where some of the biological parents, for whatever reason, whatever circumstances occurred, are unable to provide that for these children. But then these people, these caregivers, are able to step up and say, no, it doesn't have to weigh down the foster care system. The state does not have to take care of these children. I assume this responsibility. So I think that's a huge benefit. And the fact that if it is a relative, a blood relative, then they want to ensure that this child knows the family history, and they're able to have, yes, they're able to carry on with some of the similar cultural, religious, ethnic beliefs that the family may have.
Stability and continuity.
Absolutely.
Family line.
You had mentioned that raising children now is different than it may have been in 30 years, but then in talking about the values, much of that is timeless. That stability, the having a sense of value, the love, that doesn't change from generation to generation. So you're dealing with relative caregivers who have had those experiences raising other children, their own children, and they can repeat them, modify them, so they don't come in completely ill-equipped.
Correct.
To this role. Let's talk some about the challenges. You've mentioned some of them already, but Leah,
One challenge that's come up quite often, well, it's happened several times, especially in Pasco, where grandparents have received children in the middle of the night in a 55-year-old community setting where they live, where children aren't allowed to live. And so that's become a big challenge right off the bat. So that's been in the news, and quite a few other challenges. Same-sex couples and raising children that have no idea what the deal is. Yeah, so.
Not to mention, then you have the financial issue along with housing, because if you have a 55 or older person who's on a fixed income, and then they are kind of like just moderately making and living hand to mouth, then all of a sudden you have 1, 2, maybe 3 more mouths to feed on top of that. And frankly, I don't know how they do it, but somehow they make ends meet to do whatever, and that's the strength, that's the resiliency that the relative caregiver shows, is despite they know this is going to happen, and they know they're not going to be able to shop at Sweet Bay or Publix, and Walmart is going to have to be where they go to get their food, and they're going to have to get the generic milk instead of, you know, and all of these things. So finances, housing, legal is a huge problem.
The challenges of children are dropped off at grandparents who are have physical challenges. They may be in a wheelchair, they may have walkers and are not prepared. They live in one room.
Oxygen tanks. I mean, we have a grandparent with an oxygen tank in a wheelchair, and she's still caring for somebody else.
It's a terrific challenge.
It really is.
Given all of these challenges and the fact that, you know, for those of us who are fortunate, we plan our lives. You have a predictability, you do the research, and it sounds like a number of the relative caregivers, their plan changes, and they haven't had the chance to do the research. They don't have the support system for what they're getting into. So Family Resources Program becomes particularly important. Talk with us some, Al, about what Family Resources does offer to these individuals who've made this huge commitment.
As I said, one of our goal is to provide resources and support and assistance to these grandparents, and the relative caregivers, in whatever way or method we can. So in that, what we like to do is give them a relationship with a point person, which is myself, who has access to the community-based resources, as I said. I know most of the grandparents are called the 211 number, and the 211 will refer them to us.
Okay.
And at that point, what Family Resources likes to do is see if they would like to be included in a group. Because again, within the group, there's a strength. And the grandparents are able to see that isolation that they believe is happening, and they're the only one in this situation, that they walk into a room and there might be 6 or 7 peers going through the same set of circumstances as they.
So that becomes an emotional support, an affirmation, because their neighbors are traveling, they're starting into the retirement. This is a group of people who are walking in the same shoes.
Exactly.
But it must be a great source of information, too, in terms of dealing with the bureaucracy and how to do it. Is that what you find?
This kinship care program does individual counseling, which is important, and the group counseling. So right off the bat, you know, so Al's talking about the support group, but the individual counseling really is important.
And it's key because it connects the relative caregiver with a person who is then going to listen to them and hear what their specific tangible and intangible needs are, and then do whatever it is we have to do in order to meet those needs.
Especially for the aging population. That's what this is all about, the Older Americans Act program that this is. The needs of a person up in age that differs from some folks who are younger, and so
one of the instances that Leah is talking about, I just came across a grandmother was saying, well, I think she's looking for custodialship. And she's calling the Department of Children and Families, and as you know, like now in our age of technology, you do not get a person on the line. And they're always telling her to go to the website, and she's saying computers. Most of these grandparents have no computer skills whatsoever. They don't have access to computers. So in that, Family Resources, the individual counseling, would give me the opportunity to recognize their needs, try my best to assist them. A lot of the information has to come directly from them, so if I can have them on the phone or in my office, I'm able to connect them with services otherwise would not be available to them, because a lot of the grandparents will not have access to a computer, some of them don't have access to touch-tone phones. Honestly, I mean, it's a shame.
You are able to take the relative caregiver where they are.
Yes.
And work with what they have.
Yes.
To become not only a support, but it sounds like you become an advocate for them within the system.
Correct.
That you will help hold their hand, whether it's you or another member of the support group who has been there through this. Where are the support groups located, Al?
Right now we have support groups in Pinellas County, in St. Petersburg. We also have one in Clearwater that we're going to start on Tuesday. And we have one in Pasco County in Newport Richey as well.
Okay. During this segment of the show, we have been running the telephone number for your program, and we will do that during the second segment. But we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to have Mr. Bass join us, who is himself a relative caregiver, so we can learn what his challenges and what his supports have been and how that relates to your program. So I hope our audience will join us after this brief break.
Elder abuse is always devastating, but it may not always be obvious. Isolation, coercion, and the withholding of medication are only a few of the more subtle forms of elder abuse that occur every day to thousands of our senior citizens. Please join me in the fight to end elder abuse. Our elders deserve better. Visit the website of the National Center on Elder Abuse. It's time to speak up.
Today we are talking about kinship care, and joining us for this segment is Robert Bass, who is caring for his grandchildren. Thank you for joining us today. We're certainly, after hearing all of the challenges and some of the rewards of being a kinship caregiver, we're interested to hear about your family.
Okay, well, my situation's the same as Alice explained with several families. My daughter and her husband were involved with drugs and domestic abuse, and I got a call from a child protection agency one day at work, Monday at 9:30, and said, we're going to bring 2 children over to stay with your house. And I said, when? And said, right now. So you sort of drop everything and start from there. And I had to enroll them in child care and deal with all that, and then get clothing for them and diapers and food, and change the whole routine around in a hurry. So it was quite a change in just a few minutes almost.
And how old were the children when you got this call?
They were 1.5 and 2.5 years old, so they're both still in diapers. And interesting enough, I adopted all of my kids at older ages. The youngest child that moved in my home was 6 when she moved in. So for the first time in my life here, I'm over 50, and I'm changing diapers for the first time, and warming up bottles and learning baby stuff, which I never had to deal with before. So that was quite a challenge to learn that.
Yes, indeed. And how long have they been with you? How old are your children now?
They're 4 and 5 years old now, so it's been about 2.5, 3 years for me now. And it's amazing to watch them grow from being toddlers and crawling around in diapers to being kids that can dress themselves in the morning, which is a great relief that I don't have to do that every morning. I can lay out their clothes, and they can get themselves ready in the morning and brush their teeth and get ready for school. And they're starting to learn to read and write now. So it's amazing to watch them grow in that level.
Had you had a relationship with them before they came to live with you? Did they know you? And
they knew me. They had been in and out of my house most of their lives on a regular basis. So, in fact, my granddaughter was born living with me, and she spent her first 6 months with me. So I was their safe home even though the mother and father were moving around a lot. So they always came back to me, it seemed. So when the choice was made to pull them from the home, there wasn't too much question that they would come to me. So that was a little reassuring to them, I think, too, as well. And that added some stability to the change for them. So that was important, that they have some place that was safe, that they were new. And I certainly wouldn't want them to go into foster care, since I've dealt with children coming out of foster care, which is it's a whole different ballgame. And I knew they would probably separate the kids, and one would go to one county, maybe another to another county. So it would have been difficult to maintain a relationship with them as their grandparents and as a family. So I wanted to make sure we maintained that portion.
When you get that call that plunges you into having all of the responsibility, really tangible things you need to do the next day, to set up child care, to deal with their physical needs, to get diapers in the house, to learn how to change a diaper. Did you have someone supporting you through that at the beginning?
At first, I got some information from Child Protection to help as far as getting coordinated child care started and approved, but I still had to go out and visit child care centers and find child care centers and talk to people. Unfortunately, I didn't know about family resources at the time. They came into picture a little while later, but if I'd known that, it would have been a big reward program for that. But there are people. Child Protection does try to help you as much as they can, so they try to get you off to the right start and tell you what you need to do. And you have rely on your support group from your friends and from your coworkers and from your church groups that can help you out a lot too. And the thing to do is to ask for help. Make those phone calls, call 211 and find out what's out there and use those resources as soon as you can.
How did you learn about family resources?
Through one of the counselors that the kids were seeing. I heard about it and made some contacts, and I went to one of the group meetings, and it was such a relief to sit with a group of fellow grandparents raising grandkids and learning from them that you're not alone, that what you've gone through, they've gone through, and I get so much information from the other grandparents, and now that I've been there about a year and a half, I can give that information to the next set of grandparents, and so it's fun to see new people come in and they're all in a panic, and we'll say, oh, you're fine, don't worry, here's what you need to do, and here's who to call. It's very practical information. It's not just call a department or call this agency.
Right.
They will tell you who to call in that agency and what to tell them that you need and stuff like that. So we get a lot of support from each other, and we always, at every meeting, we go around the room and talk about what's going on with us and our children. So we have a tremendous support with each other. So it's a very good reassurance. And then Al does his own counseling with each of us as well. And that's support you need too, just to get some one-on-one and just be able to say, this is frustrating, and know that, yes, it is frustrating, but it is rewarding at the same time.
Talk about some of the rewards of...
Well, you get to watch kid shows, and you get take them to movies that you normally wouldn't go to.
You can go to parades and have
parades are fun, and then they always bring home lots of candy, and so trick-or-treating is all over again, and so it's a lot of things like that. You actually get to be a kid yourself, and I think that keeps you a little bit young when you can go back and talk with these kids and play with them. We play hide and seek around the house, and I have one spot they can never find me at. So when I'm tired of playing hide and seek, I go to that spot, and the game's over because they'll give up after a minute. And then it's just it's fun to watch them grow, and they have their own. Kids have their own vocabulary. They call things different. We're learning vehicles, and as we drive around, and we'd say, well, that's a car, that's a truck. And they learned what a school bus was, but they were concerned about city buses, and they said, that's a school bus. I said, no, that's a city bus. Well, they interpreted it as a silly bus. So every time they see a city bus, or they always call it a silly bus. Let's get on the silly bus and go to the beach. So they have their own language they have to learn. So you get a lot of rewards just seeing them, see how their little eyes look at things, and watching their minds understand what's going on. So it's quite rewarding to be a grandparent and seeing it again, because it's not as much pressure as when you're the parent, because you've gone through it once, so to speak, so it's not quite as painful the second time around. So. And you can correct the mistakes you made the first time.
Not all of us get that chance, whether you wished for it or not.
Right.
That chance has come to you. But talk some about the challenges. You went from being a grandparent to being a parent, because you are the primary
caregiver.
You have legal custody of the children. They do continue to have some relationship with their mother, but you have become the parent figure.
Right.
That's different than being a grandparent.
And that is a challenge, because I'm still a parent to their mother, and it sort of strains the relationship, because you're almost in an adversarial relationship with your own children over how the grandkids need to be raised and what needs to happen for them. So it can put some stress there with those relationships, and then your other children feel like they're stuck in the middle. It's almost like children of divorced parents, because all of a sudden their sister is fighting with their father over the kids, and they don't know which side to take, so to speak. But I'm always looking at what's best for the grandkids first, and it's tough sometimes. You want to help your daughter out and do things for her and let her see the kids, but there's sometimes when it's not practical, and you have to put your foot down and say, this isn't going to happen. This is what's going to happen for these grandkids. So that's a real challenge, just the relationships involved. And you also have stress with the other relatives from the other side of the family that the father's involved with. So he has relatives local, so they want to see the kids sometimes, and so there's some difficulty with that. That's one of the biggest challenge. And from other relationships issue, it's a problem as well, because you can't go out to dinner every night, because it used to be you could work late if you needed to work late and then go to dinner or go to a movie before you get home, and now it's like, oh, got to leave at a certain time, I got to pick up the kids, got to get them home, get them fed, get them to bed, because that's your priority. And people my age don't normally do that. So we're at the point where our kids have gone,
Right.
and it's time to enjoy life a little bit. And sometimes you're starting over, it seems like.
You're having to choose your enjoyment in different ways.
Different ways, but
those hugs, the kisses, the time at the park, but very different than what your expectation
Right.
had been. Yes. Leah, I know through the Older Americans Act, in addition to funding this program, there's funding for counseling for persons who are over the age of 60. Is that something that oftentimes the grandparents can take advantage of?
This part of the program has individual counseling and
It's within the
yes.
program. Okay.
Yes.
So it's immediately available to you. You can pick up the phone and call Al, whether it's a practical problem or just needing support to say this has happened. I need a listening ear.
And if he can't help us, he can refer someone that can help us. So it's a great resource to use. And Al's a wonderful resource for anything you need as far as this. And one of the things that they provide for us is every year he goes around and coordinates with different corporations to provide Thanksgiving meals for all the families, as well as Christmas for most of the kids. So my kids had more Christmas stuff this year donated to them through family resources than I probably would have bought for them or could have bought for them. So it's a great resource, and it makes life a lot easier for the holidays too.
One of the things that the program does is in keeping with the Older Americans Act, is to help older folks age in place so that they don't have to be displaced. And so with the addition of the children coming along, Al can help in that way as well with the older Americans, helping them
maintain
to
stability.
Yes.
And this way they don't, as Leah said, don't have to be displaced, move again. We can't do this because we don't have this, and try to make ends meet as best we can, as I said, with the community at large, and make those connections for the relative caregivers so their lives don't have to be as disruptive.
So we're really investing in the value of a new generation. You're doing it every day, you through the support that you provide to them. As an area agency, we're so familiar with the resources that are there to support persons age 60 and over. But this brings a whole new bureaucracy, different agencies to deal with, different programs to deal with. So
I'd like to say that the government was made to understand that grandparents are getting younger and younger. And so while the Older Americans Act deals with folks 60 and over, we have the age has been lowered to 55.
Right.
So they've seen the efficacy of doing that to include more grandparents.
I have to thank all of you for being with us, and certainly thank you for sharing your story today. There's so many people out in our community who perhaps do not know about family resources, and if they find themselves needing that support, hopefully they will have written down the telephone number and pick up the phone, call your office for some more information, because you're there to help.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do, and you do so well. And thank you for joining us today, and I thank our audience for joining us to learn about this important topic.
Hi, I'm William Mapother. I play Ethan Rahm on the TV show Lost. Let me tell you about a truly lost population. Every single day, thousands of our elderly citizens are subjected to abuse. Emotional, financial, physical. Worse, the majority of people who commit these acts are those closest to the victim. Please join me in the fight to end elder abuse. It's time to speak up. Our elders deserve better.